Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyell and K.M. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Hi, welcome to Unsheathed number 24. I'm Kyell Gold.
I am K.M. Hirosaki.
And we are back in our secure, undisclosed mountain bunker retreat location.
It's nice to get back to form.
And to be podcasting at a decent hour again, not at 1 in the morning from Hotel High Top the Strip.
Yeah, and replacing the traditional podcast wine with podcasting Guinness at undark 30 was not a good idea.
Yeah, no. I'm back to my Coke Zero.
And I'm currently enjoying a Zinfandel from Sterling Vineyards. It's actually probably one of the more mellow and mild Zins I've had, but it's pretty good.
So we're all lubricated in our traditional fashion and ready to bring you another half hour of questions and news and whatnot.
Yeah. In true otter fashion, I have come pre-lubricated for your pleasure.
Oh, otters. Is there anything they can't do?
Let me get back
Don't
to
answer that. We're very excited about the upcoming Further Confusion.
Yes.
We're going to be doing an Unsheathed podcast live. It'll be Saturday night at 10 p.m.
I'm really looking forward to that. After thinking about just the experience we've had with live shows in the past, that's one of the things I look forward to most about going to cons now is doing our show. So.
I know. I'm very excited about it, too. And we're very happy and very thankful to the staff of Further Confusion for allowing us to go on and do the podcast. So be sure and show up if you're a regular listener and you're going to be in at the convention. Show up and bring questions and enthusiasm and your clapping paws.
Yes, your clapping paws, which sound great, by the way, when we play them back.
Yeah,
I got such a kick out of listening to the Rainforest and the the FFM episodes.
Yeah, FFM was a small audience, but they were enthusiastic, and that was a lot of fun. I've also got a reading. I have a book coming out for Confusion, and we actually plan to sit down. I'm going to get Rikoshi on the show, and we're going to talk about the two books we have coming out at Further Confusion. His is called The Seventh Chakra, and it's quite good. Mine is called Shadow of the Father, and it is another story in the world of Argaea, where the Vol series took place. So fans of that world should be pretty happy.
Yeah, I was going to say the other reason I'm really excited about FC is that we've got a pretty good furry literature con coming up. There's a lot of releases coming out.
There are. There's those two books.
There's those two books. I think Fur Planet has one new novel at least.
Fur Planet, I believe, has two, if I remember correctly.
And they also have Roar Volume 2.
There's one from Siani, and I think Ben Goodrich has one as well, but I'm maybe mistaken about that one.
Is Zia McCorkey's novel out yet?
Oh, Zia...
It might be.
I don't remember if Zia's is Further Confusion or Furry Fiesta.
Well, it's one of those two, at least.
It is. So it's coming out this
quarter.
This quarter.
Yeah.
To be businessy. And we have a pretty good writing track, too. I'm on...
Everything.
I'm on I think 4 panels. I'm doing a dialogue panel, and we're going to try to make that a little bit interactive. I was talking to NotTube about it, and we're going to try to do a little dialogue exercise. So if you feel like... we're going to just talk for the first half hour, 40 minutes or so. So you can show up to that and then leave if you don't want to do the exercise later. But we have an hour and a half, so we figured we got to fill it somehow.
Yeah.
And then how to stop thinking about writing and start writing, I'm going to also have people bring little notebooks and try to do some exercises. And if possible, we may try to drag you up on some of those panels.
I was going to say, I think right now the only writing track panel I'm slated for officially is the Unsheathed podcast one.
Right.
I was going to say, I'm way too social.
Well, NotTube's only slated for one, but he asked me if he could be helper on the dialogue panel because he wants to talk about that.
I don't want to blow your otter quotient.
Don't you?
The look on your face there was worth the price of admission.
Anyhow, and I'm also on Making Your Stories Furry with NotTube and Claire Bell, which is kind of cool. I have a book of hers from way back when. And I'm on some other panel too, which I forget what it is, but I'll figure it out. It was... Now I'm doing my reading, I'm doing the podcast. The other one was one that I didn't think I could do any...
There was 5.
I'm on 6.
Or is it 6?
Yeah, I'm on 6.
Maybe I wasn't counting the podcast.
Anyway.
I don't remember. It's all
on my live journal.
It's all in Kyle's live journal.
KyleGold.livejournal.com. So go take a look there. I tell you what you should bring and where and when they are. So we're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be great. And we have a huge backlog of questions. Thank you all for writing in. We're very excited to see all that interest in the show, and it means we got to step up our game and get through the...
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of good feedback just from people saying, hey, I love the show, which makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. It's always great to hear. Because, when we sit here, the only audience we have normally is Kit. He's a very attentive audience and appreciates us. And...
Did I tell you that one of our listeners actually correctly guessed who our audience of one was at our last episode?
Wow, no.
Yeah. First try, too.
Which listener was it?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a couple letters from people on the topic of relationships and writing, and we got a couple random letters from people going to Furry Fiesta, which is kind of cool. Because I'm going to be a guest of honor at Furry Fiesta. We've been talking about that.
And I'll be an attendee at Furry Fiesta.
And we are going to do an Unsheathed podcast at Furry Fiesta as well.
Yeah, back to back.
So that's going to be cool.
It's a great couple of months for us.
And then we have a couple more random letters, which hopefully we'll be able to get to. So I'm going to start off, and we will get right in. Greetings. Your recent discussions on the effects writing can have in relationships brought up an intriguing issue. I used to be in a relationship with someone who wrote fanfics and thought they were a good writer. Yet they admitted to never reading books, and their emails and live journal posts were often disjointed and sometimes wholly incomprehensible. Spelling and grammar were poor, sentence and paragraph structure were flawed, and sometimes there would be no coherent direction at all. They read more like a typed free association exercise than intelligible communication. However, they occasionally mentioned the stories they wrote, and their opinion that their writing had been quite good. Fortunately, I never had to critique any of their work, but it raises an interesting point. If your partner wanted your opinion on their writing, and they thought it was pretty good stuff, while you thought it could use a little improvement in the same way the Hindenburg could have used a fire sprinkler, how would you handle that? Is there a constructive synonym for sucks, or would pleading the fifth be the least hurtful, if undiplomatic, way out? Much thanks for your answers and for the podcast. Keep up the good work both in print and on the air. Sincerely, name withheld to protect the incoherent.
Well, name withheld, I think you should be the writer, because that Hindenburg analogy was great.
That was quite an awesome metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. It's really tough. I liked your comment when we were first talking about the letter.
Oh, yeah.
Does this story make me look fat?
Yes. That's sort of what it comes down to, is there's a trade-off of how much do you want to hurt the person's feelings. If it weren't for the fact that you were talking about somebody that you're romantically involved with, I would say call this person out on just being full of themselves. But obviously you need to be more diplomatic than that in this case.
Yeah, it's a tricky line, and it depends on the relationship. I mean, probably the most diplomatic way to go about it would be to say, look, I don't want to get into a whole critique of your work and stuff. If you really want to, if you really want my honest opinion and you want to improve, then let's talk about a few things that maybe you could work on. And don't dive right in with, well, your work sucks. Yeah. One of the things that we talk about in critique group, and I think this is a valuable exercise for anyone asked an opinion on anything really, the first thing that you have to say about a story that you're critiquing is find the positives in it.
Yeah. And there are a few things that I've read that I haven't been able to find anything positive to say about.
Yeah, I actually can't think of anything. I mean, at the very least, you can say, this shows a lot of imagination. And most things do. I mean, people rarely go about writing something without having some measure of imagination.
For good or for ill.
Right. I've read things where I kind of wish the imagination was a little bit limited, but we're not going to go into that. we could do a whole podcast on. The problem with doing a public forum on bad writing is I've not figured out a way to talk about the bad writing I've read without mentioning the specific examples, and I don't really want to do that because I don't want to call people out for specifically this reason.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I would say, I mean, you can always find something positive. So if someone asks about their work, mention the things that you like, and then, depending on the level of trust that you have, start with something small. Say, spelling and punctuation, they're pretty important. And maybe you could work on that. If you're in a relationship, say, you want me to edit your stuff for spelling and punctuation before you send it out. And that way you're kind of helping.
Yeah. Although you might be sort of handcuffing yourself to the bedpost at that point too, depending on how prolific this person is. But
well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how much you want to invest in it, and if it's a relationship that means a lot to you, and then the person's opinion of their own writing is going to be something that's valuable to you as well.
That's true.
You don't want, that I know that you don't ever want someone to feel worse about themselves because of something you did. So if you can say, I really like X and Y about your writing, if you wanted to work on it and polish it up a bit, I would love to help you out with that.
Yeah.
And, here's a few things we could work on together.
Yeah. And also it would help to know how to be good about giving constructive criticism, whereas instead of saying, oh, I don't like what you did with this, instead say something like, I think it would be better if you did, this instead. Sort of give, guidance along with your, picking apart at things. So you're at least presenting, an option and, laying forth a suggestion rather than just levying, negative feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
And if all else fails, put story critique into part of your prenup.
Yeah.
Would be my other suggestion.
There's just, there might be just some areas that you agree not to talk about in the relationship. So, you go off, you have your writing career, and I don't talk about that, and you don't talk about my cross-dressing.
I was going to say, you don't talk about my sleeping with other people behind your back, but I think yours is actually funnier.
You don't talk about me sleeping with better writers behind your back. Go ahead and read your question. Stop thinking.
Damn it, you can see it in my eyes, can't you? So this comes from Storm Kitty, who, despite Kyle wanting to put words into my mouth, is apparently not a twinky little faggot. But so he writes, in episode 19, you asked for input about writers' partners. I can relate my own experiences. I'm divorced now, but I was married when I started writing. I was only able to convince my wife to read a couple of my stories, which, by the way, were not above a PG rating, and I think she only did it to placate me, not from any actual interest in the stories. I eventually stopped asking, as it became clear she had no interest in what I was writing. When I later wrote erotica, I decided to do it secretly for fear of her reaction, and despite the circumstances managed to produce a short novel-length story. My fear proved to be well-founded when I later found out how revolting she found any and all furry erotica to be, and that was just based on her having a general idea of what I was reading. I did at one point tell her I had written an erotic story, but never told her what it was called or what pen name I had written it under, so I'm pretty sure she never read it. It would have been so much nicer to have a spouse who was interested in what I wrote, both the adult and non-adult stuff, and who would critique it, offer encouragement. It prodded me to keep writing more, instead of some of the other time-wasting activities I tend to spend too much of my time on. And I'd do the same for her if she were also a writer. If and when I find another partner, it will have to be someone who I can be totally open with about my writing. It would also be nice if she wanted to try some of the stuff in my erotic writing rather than becomes disgusted with me because of it. Storm Kitty.
I can totally sympathize with the writing erotic stuff that you would enjoy trying with your partner.
Yeah. Although I would take that on a case-by-case basis. Do not just pick a
sure.
random story of mine and assume that that's what I would want to be into.
Well, and the only reason I'm saying that is because I have, 70-some stories up on Furry Star, or whatever it's called now. And
The Yifternets.
yeah, and so I'm fairly confident people will not assume that, Kit and I roleplay Yif in a gender change and magical winged horse.
Maybe to you. No. So first, condolences on, this relationship not working out for one. It sounds like, if you got divorced, then maybe the lacking an interest in writing probably, is.
It kind of, he doesn't mention the reasons, but it kind
well,
of
no,
feels
no, no.
like
It's probably just a part of a number of other problems that he doesn't get into and doesn't need to.
right. It kind of feels like if it's one of those things where you get together for one reason and then find that there's 6 other reasons why you shouldn't be together, and they all kind of exacerbate each other. And
Yeah.
but
No, that's unfortunate.
it is. I'm sorry to hear that, and I do hope you find a partner who's sympathetic and interested in your writing.
Yeah. And like what I was saying when this topic first came up, this would be an important point for me too. I mean, if somebody just were to tell me, during the getting to know you phase of, preliminating dating and whatnot, just like, oh yeah, I'm not really into writing and that sort of thing doesn't interest me, that would probably be a sign that I might not necessarily want to take things more seriously with that person, because that's a huge part of my life, and not being able to share that with somebody would almost certainly be a deal breaker.
I think that's true for both of us, but I will say that we know people in relationships who have very few things in common, but they're not, I wouldn't say that, well, they share a few kind of core things.
Right.
And so...
But for me, writing is one of my core things.
Yeah.
And so, in that case...
I think it'd be possible for someone to be in a relationship and say, I don't think it would be possible for me or for you.
Right.
Is it, wow.
Oh, wow.
Is that symbolic that...
Oh, wow.
Wow, yeah.
We may need to edit this out.
I just think it was very amusing that we're talking about relationships.
Exactly.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. Kit has his symbol of our love back on now, so we're okay. I can talk freely again, I suppose.
All's as it should be. The status quo has been restored.
I love you too, honey. Yeah, so, but I do think it would be possible for someone who was a writer to be with someone who was not.
Right.
And who was not interested in it, as long as they shared enough. And it came back, I'm sure we said something like this earlier, where it's, if they're not interested in writing, but they appreciate that you are, and they appreciate how important it is to you.
Right.
And they're like, well, I won't read your stuff, but I'll go with you, I'll work with you with publishers, or, if you get your stuff published, I'll go with you to conventions and attend the panels, and I'll be happy for you, and, do all that stuff. I mean, I could see that working, but...
Yeah, and it sounds like, in Storm Kitty's case, this is a point where, that is an important thing, and it sounds like, he has, having, been through that where this wasn't a shared interest, has realized that, that is more important, that this be one of those things. And, I mean, that's perfectly legitimate, I think.
Yep.
If that's what's important to you, I mean, if anything is what's important to you in a partner, then, put that on your sort of mental checklist.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. All right. I think that's all of our relationship talking for this podcast. So we got a few more questions.
For follow-ups, you can write into Notcast.
Yeah, and I please do. Okay. This is from 1X. That's spelled the number 1 spelled out, and then the capital X.
I met 1X at Anthrocon.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He's coming to Furry Fiesta. He's the only person I know who has a bee avatar.
Yeah, I know 2 insect persona people.
Well, I do too, but everyone knows one of them.
I must be missing somebody very obvious.
Uncle Kage.
Oh, okay, I know 3. I was thinking of Grillis.
Oh, I don't know if I know. Oh wait,
She's an artist.
she's she like in Utah.
I don't know where she's from, but she comes to Further Confusion.
Okay, I might have met her. All right. Anyway, 1X writes. One quick thing. When you're discussing other authors or works of fiction, could you please try to restate the author and or title of the work at the end of the discussion? I keep a notebook handy to write these things down in, but I don't know if something is intriguing until after you discuss it. I know it is by no means a great inconvenience to have to rewind the podcast a couple minutes, so I'll survive either way. P. Thank you very much for the great cast. It has been an integral addition to keep me sane during long, lonely hours in the lab podcast repertoire. I love how more recently you've gotten audience members involved using things like NaNoWriMo. I've myself been playing with a story idea for a while, but I've taken the next step and started committing those ideas to Notebook. As described, I have plenty of seemingly acceptable excuses for things I ought to be doing instead of writing, but realistically, I'd like to have the thing in a presentable form within 12 months. And one more thing. For some silly reason, I'm going to be flying my butt all the way down from Canada to attend Furry Fiesta. I look forward to attending your panel and resting some signatures from your paws. Best regards, 1X.
Well, I hear there's going to be plenty of alcohol at Furry Fiestas. So.
Yeah, that seems to be one of their traditions, so
Yeah.
that'll be cool. Well, we look forward to seeing you there, and I'm certain I will, as I say many times, I will sign whatever people put in front of me, even if it's not mine.
I was thinking about how at Furry Fiesta last year, everyone but you signed a copy of your book.
Yeah, that was fun. And also, I will add, as long as it's not illegal to be putting it in front of me in a public place, just to head off that particular avenue. But yeah, thank you for the comments.
Thank you very much.
We will continue to try to get audience members to write in and participate. And so one of the things we're going to do is, if you're setting down your story and you're going to start writing and your goal is 12 months, we're going to start the clock ticking mid-January. So keep us posted and write in as you make your progress and let us know how your story's going.
And you know what? I'm actually pretty confident that come next January, you and I will still be doing this. So.
I believe so too, which is kind of cool. As far as restating the author and or title of the work, one of the things we try to do, and this is my job and I often fail at it, is we try to put things into the story notes in the journals on FA. When I post the podcast, I try to write down any pertinent information that was in the podcast.
Right.
I often forget. Sometimes I put wines up there, and I thought that the time we put the Blender's book recommendations up,
the URL.
Thought I put them in the notes, but I might not have.
I believe you did.
But we should think of somewhere where we could just keep book recommendations and other stuff we talk about.
We could use our profile on FA.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
All right. Done.
That's a static page that's there.
And if any of y'all have recommendations for other things you'd like us to do, information you'd like us to keep online, write in. Let us know. And you see how quickly change happens.
Yep. And and good luck with your idea there, Wax. Yeah.
Best of luck, and I look forward to meeting you at Furry Fiesta.
All right. And I've got another question here. Good afternoon, Mr. Fox and Mr. Otter. Congrats on the success of the podcast so far. I finally caught up with the last few episodes today and have loved all of them, especially the live shows. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I'm a big fan of our live shows as well. Aside from making my drive a little more bearable, you two have given me a wealth of advice on writing, and it has gotten to the point where I don't think I can simply ignore the bit of my subconscious telling me to write something down. I'll set out to write a story in the upcoming weeks and see where it leads me, but I just wanted to thank you guys for the advice and the bit of motivation to get something written. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Well, I hope you do so, and then, good luck with the idea. I think that if you're...
You know what we should do is, somewhere maybe on our FA page or somewhere else, We should keep a list of our listeners who are doing writing projects and what their goals are.
So-and-so has promised to write X amount of words by X date.
Yeah.
It'll be like NaNoWriMo, only more public and evil.
And yeah, I mean, if that's what people need to motivate them.
I know that deadlines motivate me, so maybe being called out in public will help motivate our listeners.
And I have some other secrets to help you get writing, which I will be revealing at the panel on Further Confusion.
Ooh. Now for an actual question. When starting a story with an idea, how/when do you know if it will pan out to be something worthwhile? Do you realize it halfway through writing or afterwards when rereading the drafts? I know there's no big flashing neon sign that says, "Start over, stupid," but I'm wondering if there are any questions you can ask yourself about the plot or story to check if it's decent enough to continue working on. Any help would be most appreciated. So have fun with that one, guys, and I look forward to the next episode. Also looking forward to potentially seeing you at Furry Fiesta. A fellow fox, Delfer. Well, Furry Fiesta is a small enough con. I hope you run into us.
Yeah, I'm certain we will.
Yeah.
I actually have a neon sign that says "Start over, stupid."
Yeah, I was going to say I do too.
Yeah, Kit bought it for me for my birthday last year, so...
I think I stole it from you. So, he says, how do you know? It's like, is it halfway through or is it afterwards? I think it's both. Sometimes I'll get partway through a story and I go, this isn't really working for me, and I'll either try to rework it or I'll just give up and not finish it, which I've done a few times. And actually just recently, back in like November or October or so, I had this story idea and I finished writing a whole draft of it, and I was like, yeah, that didn't really go anywhere. And that has since gone unedited, unrewritten.
It has actually gone nowhere.
Yeah, it has actually gone nowhere, and not even Kyell has read it. So that shows you all how little I think of it that I don't even show it to him, and I send him all of my crap.
He does, but I'm happy to read it.
And I'm happy to read your crap, except you don't write crap. So, damn it! How do you do that?
Attend Further Confusion, and I'll tell you.
Tell me your secrets, Kyell.
Or attend Furry Fiesta. Furryfiesta.org. Dallas, Texas, February 19th through 21st.
19th through 21st, yes.
So, I've been doing this for a while now, and early on I wrote some stories. I had to write them down because I thought, I've got this great idea to start with, and I'm going to do something with it. And sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't work. What was really good practice for me was I've mentioned this a few times, the Erotic Furry Writing Challenge, where you're given some story elements and you have to complete a story in a week or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have time to sit and think, work out all the angles. You just have to write. And sometimes
can't overanalyze.
Right. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. And I wrote some, the better ones I've posted online, the other ones I haven't.
And you got some good ones out of that.
I did. I enjoyed them. I've gotten to the point now where I don't start writing something until I'm fairly confident in how it's going to go, because I usually have enough ideas kicking around in my head that I don't need to... I'm not like, I'm desperate for something to write.
The last thing I need is more story ideas.
Yeah, seriously. I'm right now working on... Well, I just finished the novella, which is coming out at Furry Fiesta. Writing...
Spoiler alert, it's really good.
I'm writing a novel. Writing a short story, which I don't quite know what I'm going to do with, but I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I have an idea for another short story. I have 2 ideas for novels, which I keep jotting down notes on. So, a lot of these things, I'm actually only working on... I finished one story, I'm working on 2 others, and I'm sort of in the planning stages of like 4 or 5 other stories. So, some of these stories... I am writing one of my handwritten one also, but anyway. The ones that are in the planning stages, if they never get to a point where I feel comfortable starting out, like I usually try not to start a story till I'm pretty sure I know where it's going to end.
Yeah.
And if I have a beginning and an end, then I'm pretty sure I can figure out the middle, and I know it's going to go somewhere. So generally, if it for me now, if it doesn't get out of the planning stage, then I don't start writing it.
Yeah. I have a notebook, which you actually gave me as a Christmas present one year, which is full of story beginnings, where it's an idea of this is what the story would be about, this would be the setup for it, and I haven't done anything but write down those ideas. I haven't started to try to write them. I haven't started to sketch them out. I'm just sort of waiting someday for me to figure out what, I have A, and once I think of B and C, I'll probably write them. But I haven't done that yet, and I've been busy.
And I will say that the one exception to that rule that I can think of recently was, so I had a couple exceptions, because the novella that I just finished didn't start out having a specific ending. It started out as kind of a gimmick, and then
Which I think I inspired you with.
Which you did inspire me with.
So you can kind of thank me for that one, guys, when you read it.
You can thank him a lot at Furry Fiesta.
Oh, you can thank me as much as you want, with mojitos and beer.
Yes. That was the Rain City Punch was Seattle, wasn't it?
Yes, which I'm debating whether or
Although
not
the dingo was from Texas.
Or was he?
Or was he?
Because he says Dallas at one point and then Austin at the other point.
That's true.
So he might be.
But they were both in
near
Texas. Anyhow, so the novella started out as just a gimmick, and then the characters developed so much over the course of the gimmick that they required a couple more pieces to wrap up their story. The other one that I'm handwriting in my notebook, which I think I posted a picture on Twitter when we were visiting out in the Midwest. That one, just the idea hit me, and I knew right away there was no question. I still don't know what the exact ending to the story is, but I know what the main character's problem is, and I know what journey he needs to make to solve it. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of it, but I know it's going to be an interesting story. So I went ahead and started writing it, and it's just going to be one of those like...
Those are the rare gems, and I treasure those stories almost more than others.
Yeah, those are really...
My stories are like my children. I kind of love them all, except for the ones that I don't.
Right.
There's some of the ones where I look at and go, I am so disappointed in you.
And some of them give you a lot more trouble than others.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. We're talking about, whether to know you have a good idea or not. I mean, if you don't have a good idea, then, maybe you don't. Table it and
all right,
think on something else.
Yep. Well, thank you for the kind words about the podcast. We intend to keep doing these for a while, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Furry Fiesta.
Yeah.
That was my turn now.
So, yeah.
Okay. Hey, Kyell and Hirosaki-san. Your friendly neighborhood drawing, writing, and podcasting dragon here. Good news! I'm writing a graphic novel, and once it is written, I will also be illustrating it. Now, I know that you guys are not too much into writing for the graphic novel medium, but I'm wondering if there are any tips you have for someone who is going to be writing a graphic novel. I also know that having well-established three-dimensional characters is important. Dialogue is also important, but is there any other tips that come to mind? I would love to hear your feedback. Cheers and Happy New Year's, Dragon Man Mike. Dragon Man Mike is part of the team from Anthromedia Podcasts who interviewed me at Rainforest and are very nice, north of the border. They were quite pleasant to be around and a lot of fun. And he's also on Twitter, although I forget exactly what his name is on Twitter. But at any rate, I did some scripting for a graphic novel recently, and I'm still working with the artist on it. A lot of the same conventions apply as they would to a normal story. The three-dimensional characters, the engaging plot. There's some interesting things you can do with a graphic novel because you can show things in the background that you don't have to mention specifically.
Right.
And one of the cool things about a visual medium like comics or movies is where in text, if I want to say, so here's one of the best examples. I love the Tintin books. So there's a Tintin comic where they meet a new character, and when you look back through the comic, he's smiling, he's happy all the time, And about partway through the book, he starts to become more worried and more quiet and more withdrawn. And it turns out there's a secret, and at the end they mention, oh, when we first met him, he was smiling and happy, and you go back through the book and you're like, wow, I didn't even notice that. Whereas if you were writing that as a story, you would have to put in a lot of stuff about he smiled, he was smiling, he was happy, and then, oh, he looked more
It'd
concerned.
almost be too obvious.
Right, and then you'd have to put in, did the characters think about why he's like that? You'd have to do it subtly, and then it's hard to go back. And in visual storytelling, you can get away with those things really easily, really subtly, really quickly.
I think the other thing about writing for a graphic novel is that it's almost sort of like a test of how good of a writer you are, because you're not working on narrative prose, but you have to be good at narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
And to be able to hit those points and to hit those notes. And my Mercantic series that I wrote many, many years ago at this point, there were several times where people had discussed the potential of, oh, I think this would make a great graphic novel. And at first I was like, oh, that would be an idea. Let me see if I could do that. And I realized that the kind of story that is, it's very internalized. It's very, no, I don't want to say it's very cerebral. It's very mental. A lot of what's going on takes place inside the characters' heads, which I don't think those kinds of stories are necessarily that well suited for a graphic novel medium.
Yeah.
Which is why I've never seriously worked on that idea.
I'm assuming that you've read the Scott McCloud books on comics.
I'm familiar
not you,
with them, at least.
I mean, Dragon Man Mike.
Okay.
If he's trying to write a graphic novel, I'm hoping he's read Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. That was the main one that I read, which is
I at least know that one.
Really cool. He has two more since then. There's Reinventing Comics, and I forget the other one. I'm looking at Kit. Kit doesn't know either. But Understanding Comics really digs into the heart of how to tell a graphic story and what things make graphic novels unique. There's a lot of stuff like, things that happen between panels.
Yeah.
Things that pacing is a lot different in a graphic novel. That would be, I think, the second after dialogue. That would be the thing that I would say you need to pay the most attention to is pacing of your story.
Yeah, the proper use of like silent beats and that sort of thing,
and how quickly action moves along. Because that's in a novel that's a little more. It's less on the surface.
Yeah.
In a graphic novel, it's tangible. It's right on the page.
Yeah. And if you have like a page in a novel where there's no dialogue and you still can't tell what's going on despite what the pictures are showing you, then there's probably a problem with the way it's been set up.
If you can...
No, if you can't tell.
If you cannot tell what's going on, even without dialogue. I agree.
I mean, there are plenty of great comics and graphic stories that don't even have any words at all. It's just told visually, and some of those are beautiful. And then there are some, things where I'm just, there'll be like a couple of pages in a larger graphic work where there's no dialogue, and you're just sort of like seeing like the characters doing something, but because of the pacing of what you're showing in the panels, it's like I can't follow. There's not enough for me to fill in the blanks, whatever. It's like I don't know what's going on here, and there's no words to help me with what's going on.
And you also kind of, we'll wrap this up quick. We have one more letter, and I think his question wasn't too involved.
No,
so.
I can.
But the one other thing I want to say also is use the comic medium. You were talking about internalized stories,
right?
It's kind of I like seeing comics where the comic is part of the story, and it's not just a stage where the story takes place.
Yeah, make use of the medium.
Right. Yeah. Because if it's just a bunch of talking heads and huge word balloons filled with dialogue, I mean, you go back to like Dave Sim with Cerebus. Did you ever read those?
I haven't actually read it, but it was sort of, I wasn't into that
the
sort
early
of
ones.
thing at
The
time,
early
but...
ones are terrific. They're great comics.
Yeah, no, you've told me about them
They're
before.
Beautiful uses of the medium and all that. And then later he falls in love with his own prose style. And so he'll have comics that are like one illustrated panel and then a whole mess of text down the middle and then another illustrated panel. And it's just like, this isn't why I'm writing a comic book. And also you're not as good a writer as you think you are. But he, I mean, that said, he is a good writer. So I can't take that away from him. But let's finish up.
All right. Our last email here is from from Rivka of Rabbit Valley.
Yeah, Rivka.
Hi, Rivka. So he says, happy Saturday. Well, it's Saturday as I type this message, but you can feel free to replace the day with that of the day when you read this message.
It's Saturday in Chicago.
Yeah, and in Japan. I want to thank you for putting the time and effort into the Unsheathed podcast, and I truly do enjoy listening to you banter back and forth with each other, and the advice you give on writing is very well thought out. Well, thank you.
Technically, it's not really thought out. We just sort of say whatever off the top of our heads, but thanks.
Thank you. I guess that just means we have a natural rapport. Perhaps you can assist me a little in my writing.
Oh, yes.
You see, I am a published author of articles in scientific and medical publications, with 6 articles picked up in 5 different publications to date.
Congratulations.
But have a hard time making...
Is that rapport?
There's our rapport. But I have a hard time making the transition to nonfiction.
I think he means to
I think he means to fiction.
Yeah.
Writing about soldiers in deserts of Middle East and their need for emergency eye wash stations, or the various methods of a molecular pathology laboratory can come easily to me, but writing about characters, regardless of the situation, poses something of a challenge. My day job has positioned me to be a regular contributor to an industry publication house, meaning more writing work for me. I know that I'll be able to research, write, and edit the feature-length articles with ease, but I can't seem to get more than a few hundred words of any fiction story down on paper before throwing my paws up in defeat. Dialogue seems to be one of my biggest challenges. Perhaps more people watching and listening is in order. I read a fair deal of fiction and simply adore your collective works. Perhaps I should attend more writing workshops. Any thoughts or suggestions? Sincerely, Rivka.
Well, I would say you should attend the panel on writing dialogue at Further Confusion.
Except I don't think he's going.
Is he not?
No.
I thought he was.
No, because Rabbit Valley has Fur Planet selling their stuff this year.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, all the more reason he could show up and not have to be stuck in the dealer's room. Rivka, you have several days. Come to Further Confusion.
We can tempt you with alcohol. I know you drink alcohol. I've seen you do it.
And coffee. I have not personally seen you drink alcohol or coffee, but I've heard secondhand. Oh, the stories.
Oh, the salacious stories on Twitter. No, but
Hirosaki has regaled me with so many tales.
Oh, and you can wonder how he's spelling that.
Yes, you can.
But yeah, so writing fiction and writing nonfiction, historically, or not historically, but personal history, I used to have to do a bunch of nonfiction, technical scientific writing myself at some point in my life. And nonfiction writing and fiction writing are, in fact, 2 completely different disciplines. Yeah. Other than the fact that you need to know proper English grammar and syntax and whatnot, beyond that, it's apples and oranges. Like, they're both fruits, but once you do that, it's just, okay. Yeah. Where do you go from there?
Nonfiction writing, in my experience, has to be as uninteresting as possible.
Yes, and it's almost... That was what was so hard for me, is I had to make it painfully uninteresting.
Yeah.
You have to suck all the soul and personality out of it so it's scientifically valid.
Yeah, Kit has a good point. I wouldn't say we say uninteresting kind of as a blanket description. What I mean actually is closer to what you said, soulless and dead.
Yeah. Well, as far as scientific work goes, I mean, I have read plenty of nonfiction that is actually very interesting.
Well, that's true.
I mean, I'm a huge fan.
But he was talking scientific and medical articles, which are very fact-based.
Yeah,
and
articles is what I was thinking of. Yeah,
yeah. No,
but, stuff like Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking and that sort of thing. That's very interesting, and actually,
but they're telling stories.
They are.
They're like the Jared Diamond stuff about civilizations. He's constructing a story, and he shapes the facts to make it an interesting story. So it's a little bit different from writing a medical article where the purpose of writing the article is simply to convey a set of facts, and the audience is already plugged in to want to read it. I would be interested to hear, because he mentions dialogue, but I'd be interested to hear what exactly he feels his roadblocks are to writing fiction. Yeah. Like, what frustrates him when he's when he gets that 200 words or 300 words in, why does he stop? Is it just, he can't imagine what people would say? Or is it I have a feeling that when you're conditioned to write a lot of dry technical articles about factual circumstances, that it's difficult to switch to writing something where not only do you not have to know all the facts, but you actually should not reveal all the facts, even if you do know them.
Right. I think that in a very real sense, he's actually got a leg up on a lot of other aspiring writers in that, he knows for a fact, by virtue of having had articles published, which is something to certainly be proud of, the technical aspects of knowing how the English language works, like, that's not something he has to worry about.
Right.
And that's not true of everyone. Some people need to worry, like, is my writing technically competent? And I think that he can rest assured that it is.
Going back to our first letter.
Yeah. And, so, knowing that that's not an issue, at that point, it's more of a matter of, okay, what sort of stories do you want to tell? What's going to inspire you to write it? And, if you do have a roadblock, what's putting that in your way? I think that, certainly, like, if you have an idea and are you shaking on, okay, this idea, I don't know where it's going to go, or, oh, I have a great idea, but I don't think I'm going to do it justice. Those are different problems. And so I think that, identifying the source of the problem and then either trying to work with it or trying, write around it, whatever's going to get the words out onto the page, most readily. And again, the advice that we keep mentioning on our show is, not to be afraid of the fact that your first draft is going to need to be rewritten, because it's going to need to be rewritten. And don't kid yourself that it isn't, and don't feel ashamed that you're going to have to do that.
And I was just having a conversation with someone who's been writing for not much less time than I have, who still is having trouble with that. So
there are plenty of stories that start writing and get hung up on.
People struggle with that all the time. But the other thing, the main general piece of advice we can give you is just keep writing. If you get stuck on a scene, switch and do something else. Give yourself short fiction assignments. There's a whole bunch of writing workshop books that have really short assignments, like describe, when you find yourself just sitting in an area, describe a scene.
Yeah.
Like you say in your letter, do watch and listen to people, sit in a public area and just listen to the snatches of conversation and how people talk as they walk by you. And
that's very revealing.
And write down, the reason you should write this down, all right, I'm going to tip a little bit of our dialogue panel, but the reason you should write down what people say instead of just listening is you will have a tendency to change the words you hear into the kinds of words that you expect to hear when you try to tell the story again later.
Yeah.
And
think of your... Oh, go on, sorry.
No, so I was just going to say, it's important that you develop an ear to listen to exactly the words that were said and write those down, and you'll be surprised when you try to remember it later. You'll remember it differently than you wrote it down, because your brain reprocesses it to be more in line with what you'd expect.
Yeah, and I think another thing that comes to mind when you're thinking of character voice and the importance of it and the ways to differentiate it is, think of a particular joke or, something along those lines, and then imagine how different friends of yours... Now, imagine how different friends of yours would tell that same joke, and, how they would phrase it differently, or how they would, change the way that they deliver it. You're being awful.
I know.
I heard
doing
that,
it deliberately. I know you did.
I'm trying to help Rivka.
You bowled through it quite effectively.
I'm difficult to phase. That's actually
no,
that's a blatant lie.
That is a lie. As longtime listeners of the podcast know.
All I need to do is say my name, and suddenly K.M. Hirosaki doesn't know what to do.
I don't even have to say your name. I just have to say Kyle Gold, Fox with Coke.
Yeah. Shit, is there a pop quiz? I didn't study for this. Oh my God.
Well, so anyway, good luck with your writing. Thank you for all your work with Rabbit Valley also.
Yeah, and if you think that there's a particular type of roadblock that you have with your stories,
right
back in.
Right back in. I took a drink because I thought you were going to be talking.
No, I was just going to say right back in.
Damn it. All right. Well, that we got through like double our quota of letters and only ran a little bit over time.
Yeah, I think that it's okay to do a little longer because we have our pre-con extravaganza.
Kids, we only ran a little over our time.
Yeah, by wolf standards.
I don't care. I know how big you are, Kit. You don't have to show Hirosaki as well.
Hey, man, I wrote that shit.
Our email address is unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com. We are also Unsheathed on FA.
Mm-hmm.
I am Kyle on FA, and I post most of my updates to kylegold.livejournal.com.
And you can find me pretty much equally at KM Hirosaki at LiveJournal, KM_Hirosaki at FA. And I've taken to Twittering.
And we're both
too.
on Twitter. I'm Kyle Gold on Twitter.
Yeah, and KM Hirosaki.
And thank you, as always, for writing in. We appreciate it. And we're looking forward to meeting a bunch of y'all at For the Confusion and Furry Fiesta, where we're going to have some unsheathed swag, courtesy of our tech-savvy, marketing-savvy wolf. And also at Further Confusion, we're going to debut some CDs of Unsheathed, where trying to raise a little bit of money to defray some of the cost of equipment we've sunk into the podcast, and in order to make it so that you're not just giving us money for something you could download off the internet, both Hirosaki-san and I read already published stories of ours.
It's not just bonus content, it's sexy bonus content.
It is. And in my case, it's listen to Kyle try to manage 6 or 7 different accents in the same story content.
And I have happy blowjobs.
Yes. They're actually, very fittingly, they're both blowjob stories.
Which, that's our raison d'etre.
Well, I don't know about that. At least we know Kaz will appreciate them.
Yes.
Anyway.
Kaz, blowjob existentialist.
I believe at Further Confusion, the CDs will be at or around the Sofa Wolf table. At Furry Fiesta, not sure yet. Hopefully Fur Planet will have... Oh, I have a table at Furry Fiesta.
Oh,
so they'll be at my table. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently. I'll be next to Fur Planet, so they'll be near the Fur Planet table.
You might find me camped out there. Look for the bright green visor.
Yes. And look for my stylish hat, and I don't know what else I wear.
Sunglasses?
White jacket, sunglasses. I don't know. You'll find me.
Listen for the accent.
So come pick up the CDs if you want the bonus stories. They also have artwork from our pal Bobby No. And we look forward to...
I saw the preliminary artwork. It's really good.
The next time you hear from us, we will be live at Further Confusion.
All right, so we'll see you there. I am KM Hirosaki.
And I am Kyle Gold.